Your species has exactly 60 seconds to exist.
Good. That's almost enough time to make your worst mistake.
The Vorrkai had cataloged 4,000 intelligent species across 11 galaxies. They ranked every civilization by threat level, from docile prey to dangerous predators, using a system refined over 300,000 years of conquest. At the very bottom of that list, marked in their archives as Category Null, sat a pale blue planet in an unremarkable spiral arm. Earth. The Vorrkai assessment was thorough. Humans had no hive mind, no natural armor, no venom. Lifespans so short they barely registered. Fragile bones. Exposed organs. They bled from the smallest cuts. They cried when they were sad. They aged. They died alone. A temporary civilization, the High Vorrkai commander Serath recorded in his conquest log. They will understand their extinction before it arrives. That is a mercy. He had never lost a campaign. He had never faced humans before. On the surface of Earth, in a mountain garrison carved into the rock of Colorado, General Yael Miran stood at the edge of a tactical map that covered an entire wall. Red markers. Hundreds of them. Each one a Vorrkai landing site. She was 53 years old. Gray. At her temples. A scar ran from her jaw to her collarbone. A gift from the first wave. She hadn't slept in 40 hours. Around her, young soldiers watched her face. Not the map. Her face. Because her face told them whether to be afraid. She wasn't afraid. She pressed one finger against the map, against the largest red cluster, and spoke quietly to the room. They think this is over. She paused. They've never met anything that survived long enough to learn from them. Nobody moved. She turned around. So let's teach them something new. Commander Serath's warship descended through cloud cover like a dark god arriving at judgment. His fleet numbered 60 vessels. His ground forces 12,000 Vorrkai soldiers, each standing nearly 3 meters tall, armored in biological plating that hardened under kinetic impact, armed with plasma lances that turned concrete to vapor, spread across the valley below in perfect formation. Against them stood 400 humans. Serath watched the feed from his orbital sensors. 400. He had confirmed the number 3 times. He found it almost insulting. His translator activated. He broadcast on all human frequencies, his voice descending from the sky like thunder. You are outnumbered 30 to 1. Your weapons cannot pierce Vorrkai armor at combat distance. Your command structure has been identified and targeted. Surrender your territory in the next 60 seconds, and your biological material will be preserved for cataloging. He waited. 40 seconds passed. A single human voice came back through the static. We're going to need more than 60 seconds. A pause. We're a little busy. Serath enlarged the sensor feed. The 400 humans were moving. Not retreating, not surrendering. Moving through the terrain with strange, deliberate speed. Spreading out. Disappearing into ridgelines, tree cover, rock formations. Evasion behavior, his tactical officer noted. Prey dispersal pattern. Agreed, Serath said. Begin the advance. 12,000 soldiers moved forward. They crossed the valley floor in perfect discipline lines. Vorrkai soldiers had crushed armies of millions. This was not a battle. This was a closing of a fist. The first 4 minutes were silent. Then the mountain moved. The explosion came from below, not above, not from the tree line, from below, and it swallowed an entire Vorrkai column in one violent second. Before Serath could process it, 3 more detonations ripped through the formation from different angles simultaneously. 40 seconds later, 2 of his warships, hovering at low altitude to provide cover fire, lost engine function at the exact same moment and dropped hard into the valley ridge. Serath stared at his readouts. How are they hitting our ships? They have no orbital capability. General, his tactical officer's voice had changed. They preloaded the terrain. These detonations, the grid pattern, they prepared this valley before we landed. They knew our formation doctrine. Serath felt something he had not felt in 3 centuries of conquest. He felt uncertain. General Miran was already underground when the second wave of explosions triggered. She moved through the tunnel system her engineers had spent 6 weeks digging. 6 weeks while diplomats stalled the Vorrkai with surrender negotiations that were never real. Every second of those talks had been borrowed time. Every borrowed second had been spent building this. Corridor 7 is clear. A voice crackled in her earpiece. Copy. Light it up. The electromagnetic pulse array had been her engineer's quiet masterpiece. Not built to destroy Vorrkai ships outright. Human technology couldn't match Vorrkai shields in a direct contest. Built to do something simpler, more devastating. To kill the synchronization signal between Vorrkai soldiers' armor units and their central command network. Vorrkai armor was extraordinary. Individually, it was still remarkable. But without network sync, without the real-time tactical feed from the command vessel telling each plate when to harden, where to reinforce, it became a rigid shell. Heavy, slow, a cage, not a shield. Miran emerged from the tunnel exit onto a high ridge and raised binoculars. Below her, 12,000 Vorrkai soldiers had stopped moving. Not because they were defeated, because they were confused. Their armor had locked. Their formations had fractured. Their commanders were shouting on frequencies that suddenly answered with static. And out of the rocks, the ridgelines, the shadows of a mountain range that had been quietly turned into the most prepared killing ground on Earth, 400 humans began to move forward. Not running, walking, calm, deliberate, surgically precise. Miran watched Commander Serath's personal command shuttle begin emergency ascent from the valley floor. Retreating, she noted, before his army did, and she pressed the final trigger sequence. The localized gravity disruptors, buried 6 meters underground, activated in a line directly beneath the shuttle's escape vector. The shuttle dropped. It didn't crash. It landed. Hard. Controlled by automated safety systems that kept Serath alive. Which was exactly what she wanted. She needed him alive. She needed him to report back. She pressed her earpiece. All units. Controlled advance. Take prisoners. Every single one of them. A young soldier's voice came back, surprised. General, prisoners? What? Miran lowered the binoculars. Because the Vorrkai have 4,000 species in their database. And right now, every one of those species is watching what happens here. She paused. Make sure it's educational. The battle lasted 6 more hours. By the end, 9,000 Vorrkai soldiers had surrendered. The remaining 3,000 had retreated to the mountains and were found cold, confused, and deeply frightened by morning. Commander Serath sat in a human-built holding facility in Colorado. No chains, a chair, a table, clean water. He had refused to speak for 3 hours. Miran sat across from him without weapons, without guards. Just her, him, and the silence of a commander who had never lost trying to understand the shape of what had just happened to him. Finally, Serath spoke. You could not have won this engagement, he said. Not by any calculation. Not by any model. Miran nodded slowly. That's because your models were built on everything you'd already seen. She leaned forward. We're something you haven't seen yet. Serath studied her face. The scar. The calm eyes. The complete, unnerving absence of triumph in her expression. What are you? He asked quietly. She stood, straightened her jacket, walked to the door. She stopped, turned back one final time. We're the species that got knocked down 400 times and turned it into a training program. She left him with that. Outside, under a sky still streaked with the smoke of fallen warships, the soldiers of Earth looked up. And somewhere in the deep dark between stars, 60 Vorrkai vessels turned around. The galaxy had been watching. The galaxy now knew to be afraid.